Or was that a natural rap on the blood of Christ?
That makes me want to throw up, dude. That's so scary. Counting our rubies after a good sale.
Right.
Which was
profitable day.
We were there, bro. We were there.
Yeah.
I think we broke there.
Yeah.
I think we transcended.
Good morning, my name is Mary. Welcome to Jare to Jared. On this week's episode, the Jareds will discuss our dreams, new frontiers, the Silk Road, hanging out with the Beatles, and much, much more. And now, the show.
Yeah, and I was going to say how, like, you know, a lot of Native people believed that was like, if you get your photo taken, it's stealing part of your soul. So it's like you fracture the image of the individual. So you fracture their being and you fracture their soul. And then, so take like a movie star where their image is plastered everywhere. They've been in like this like postmodern kind of way, like so fractured and reproduced over and over and over again that the core essence of just the sort of singular being has been broken so many times.
Right.
It's like Horcruxes from Harry Potter, you know?
Well, this is Lawrence of Arabia too, right? I don't know if you remember the last Scholar pod I did on it. But there's a scene at the end where they don't want him to take the picture, right? Because it stills the soul of them. But he still kind of does it anyways.
It's,
you know, a violation almost of the person, of the culture, the fracturing of the self. Yeah. And like you're saying, the native thing is it stills your soul.
Right. Yeah.
And then if you think about it in celebrity.
Yeah.
Oh my
Forget
God.
it, dude. When we're
I
in
got
Target,
a painting of Mila Jovovich in my house.
Yeah,
you know, some random Hispanic dude in New Mexico.
Right.
You know, and man, just millions of pictures.
Yeah.
And photographs and whatever.
Wild. Reproduced over and over and over again. And like, when we were in Target before, I saw a magazine cover with Beyonce, and I was like, does Beyonce actually exist at this point? Like, if that woman's soul has been broken up and fractured and reproduced how many billions, trillions of times at this point, right? Where's the actual individual of Beyonce Knowles? Does that essence of a human being actually exist anymore, or has she just become kind of like an empty center, you know, that she is just image at this point?
Right.
Like, who is she as like a human being?
Right.
You know?
But then again, sort of our conversation at breakfast, well, then you just sort of, you're not any different though also.
Yeah.
You're just seen as, perceived as different. You're still just someone complaining at breakfast because you didn't get eggs in your burrito.
Right.
You know?
I was so pissed about that.
Ask for eggs in a breakfast
so
burrito.
Weird. So dumb.
Still, you know, so I don't know. When it boils down to it, we're all just, you know, human beings, I guess.
Yeah.
But it has to fracture I wonder what type of dreams people with fame and, you know, fractured selves that they have. What is it? Do they dream of multiple selves?
Yeah.
Is it like the being John Malkovich room? Malkovich, you know?
So yeah, great point.
Beyonce.
Beyonce bitch.
Beyonce bitch room.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. There's something to that. And
let's get more down on the micro here.
Yeah.
Microwave.
Okay.
Tell me about your dreams. Have you had reoccurring dreams? Did you have night terrors when you were a kid? We were talking about this a little bit.
Yeah. Dreams is the theme of the day.
Perhaps what's the most recent dream that you've had?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say it's interesting that this theme's coming up because yesterday, 2 days ago, I think it was 2 days ago. So Anastasia tells me her dream, right? And then we're, you know, talking dream interpretation. And then that same exact day, a friend of mine back east, close friend, he texts me and he's like, hey, you got time for a call today? I had this crazy dream I want to talk to you about. So that was like 2 in 1 day. And then we meet up, right? And then you're like, oh, I had this crazy dream, you know?
Right.
And then, yeah, I don't know. Dreams have just been like coming up more like all at once. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Something there. But anyway, in my own experience, so I read this book. I think the author's name was Robert Moss. He's this guy who writes about dreams, has a bunch of books on dream and dream interpretation. And he's an Australian dude who lives in upstate New York and teaches these like shamanic dreaming classes and stuff like that. So I read his book, and his premise is that actually this ties into the fracturing of who we are via photographs as well, because he says every time you experience a trauma, say, right, something terrible happens, you lose a part of yourself, or that part gets stuck in that moment, you know? So you're 8 years old and you're in a terrible car accident. The brain gets so freaked out that it almost like fractures. That part of it just gets like stuck. And like psychological research shows that that's essentially true, that trauma gets imprinted onto the brain. So it's like that moment never actually ends for the subconscious. It's an ongoing moment because it's so freaked out that it's like white knuckle holding on to this moment. So there's a fracture because now there's you operating in the present, just being a conscious human going through your day-to-day life. And then there's the part of your subconscious that's still white knuckle grit holding on to that moment. So now there's a fracture, there's a split. Right. So he goes throughout our life, and this is very natural. It's just part of being a human. You lose different pieces of yourself along the way. Right. So something happens here and you get stuck on that. Something happens there, you get stuck on that. And it happens so many times, you know. Someone makes fun of you in middle school and you feel ridiculed or rejected, and then something gets stuck there, right? Whatever. Right. And then your duty as a conscious adult is to go back, travel through those periods of time, regathering and collecting those pieces of yourself and integrating them back into your whole self. So you're getting these fractured parts of yourself. So if Beyonce had to do this, like if it were literal, she'd have to go into people's homes and like take her picture back in order to reclaim that part of her that was broken off and stolen, right?
Sure.
You know, with the internet, it makes it even harder. Poor Beyonce. But like, but according to this book, Robert Moss, he says Beyonce. Our dreams provide the opportunity to do that. Right. That we can actually, very often our dreams are that stuck part of our psyche calling out for attention in a hyper symbolic way. Sure. And then we can actually go back into the dream through lucid dreaming, through visualization, whatever it is, and claim it, give ourselves what we need, whatever it is, you know, whatever the thing is.
So I agree with everything you're saying. Let me hit it from the yang though, or the yang. Sure. I think these impressions and imprints and sort of core memories that we hold on to are not always associated with trauma either. I think that we have
I don't want to overemphasize
of immense accomplishment or love of a person, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's sort of where the dream girl, dream boy type archetype came from.
Interesting, yeah.
Where your brain is literally dreaming of joy, of love, of something potential, of togetherness, of relationships, what have you, or of laughter, right? You know, happiness. And that can also be reflected, you know, in the dream world. But what you want to do still, what you're saying is having a healthy river. I think so much with trauma, especially where we get, and with joy, which can lead to trauma of good intentions, right? Hamlet. I think what happens is we build a dam with these sort of core experiences throughout our memory, and we're blocking up that river, that flow of consciousness.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
You know, where these fractures have happened. Right. What we should rather do is include the joy and happiness into our everyday consciousness.
Sure.
and include the trauma to accept it, come to terms with it.
Right.
Freaking Wordsworth style, rewrite it, right? Have a time travel back to that time, rewrite your history. Then
Burroughs,
Burroughs.
Yeah.
And then we can get to a point of, you know, a flow state in life.
I love that. Yeah. Actually, that's a fucking great point, because very often up until like this very moment now, my whole mindset has changed. Thank you, Jare.
Same.
For a long time, I've been like, happiness. What does happiness look like? How do you pursue it? You know, as if it's something to be achieved. And now I'm thinking it's like, no, it's not about like amplifying joy in your life or anything. It's actually just about flowing the energy, which tends to offer more joy, but just opening. And this is like Qigong or something like that, or, you know, it's like working with like the energetic body, right? The energy's flowing through your body, like a lot of like,
the chi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like acupuncture and stuff like that is like this chi energy moving through your body. And if you're experiencing pain or getting sick in a certain way, it's because that there is exactly what you're describing. There's a dam, there's a blockage in the kidney, for example. So now you're getting like a kidney stone, and you need to release that energy because the human body is meant to be porous and fluid.
We should.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah. Seriously. And what's happening when you're young?
Yeah.
Getting night terrors and repetitive terrors.
Right.
Well, it's maturation too. Your body's going through all kinds of hormonal states. Your brain's growing. You're not fully developed yet.
Yeah.
So therefore, your flow of consciousness is chaotic. It's, you know, it's rapids is what's happening. Mm-hmm. Therefore, your dream state will reflect chaos like that. And how do we reflect chaos in a cinematic, you know, amplification of fear? Yeah. I remember my freaking night terrors were wild. One of them would literally take place in a movie theater. Yeah. Like went and saw City Slickers 2, and I would have this night terror where the City Slickers guy would come out of the screen and just like huge head, you know, wake up screaming, and then I would have this repetitive nightmare that would happen up until I was like in my 20s, where these pale like people
this is so scary.
Would float in this city and they would chase me like very slowly, but I couldn't get away from them. And it was like an 18th century, like England. Yeah. And they'd have top hats and trench coats. Oh and like follow me around. And then later in my like 20s, I found this movie called Dark City.
Yeah.
And they were just like that. I was just thinking about that. It was so weird. And I was like, I know this movie.
So weird.
You know, and it could be that sort of Y-Files thing where if I were to put that on the internet or something, a bunch of people would be like, I dreamt of them too.
Oh, you know? God. That's fucking wild. Yeah.
Like that one dude everybody would dream about, you know. Yeah. Crazy. Well, and then this gets into Carl Jung's collective unconscious.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, for
where
sure.
We're also, you know, dreaming of these old past experiences of other people's lives that are currently living. We're all in a collective conscious.
Right.
And then when you get into a relationship with somebody, well, he explains it as like energy, right? The like, I can't remember exactly the word, but there's like a beam of energy that connects you to in the collective unconscious. So you start dreaming of each other, all this stuff. So when you sever that connection and break up, it's devastating. Right? Yeah. It's this like cosmic thing that goes down, you know?
Yeah. God, there's so many things to say there. That's fascinating. All of it. Well, one, I want to point out the whole image of something behind the movie screen crawling out of the screen. Like there's something deeply terrifying about that for you and I as cinephiles, right? Like one, your dream, childhood dream of like
The Ring.
Yeah, dude, City Slickers. Yeah, exactly. The Ring, climbing out. And that was an Arrival, right? I mean, there's the whole like setting where it's the the aliens.
Well, she goes behind the screen.
Exactly. Their aliens are on the other side of the screen, and then it's that transmission into that other space, into that other world. That's frightening, ethereal, all of that. And what is the dream if not that itself, right? The dream is when the veil has been lifted, right? You have the conscious world, and then you have the unconscious world. And when you're dreaming, you're stepping into that unconscious space. So there is something, and you don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I think dreams are kind of inherently scary. And there's a great fear too of having your dreams realized. You know, we've talked about the fear of success before.
I'm liking this a lot.
Yeah,
I'm liking this. Seriously. The dream is coming out of the screen, or it's behind the screen.
Exactly.
Right? Conscious. Yeah.
So even if it's a good dream, you know, fear of success, fear of having your dreams realized.
Right.
Perhaps it's a nightmare. Perhaps it's too good to be true. All this stuff. Wow. You know, there's something there that we at some level prefer these boundaries. You know, we prefer to have the screens protecting us, because when you're watching a movie, you're safe, right? You're comfortable. You're not in the havoc that's going on in the movie. You know, the heptapods aren't, you know, fucking speaking to you in their language and shit. We're just watching that from a distance. We're safe. We're safe, you know. However, when we enter that space, when we start to dissolve those boundaries, and then we realize, oh shit, I'm here. This is life. I've been here the whole time. Oh God, that's scary, because now it's risky. Now there's not that separation. Me watching the movie, it's like you are the movie.
Right.
Oh.
But on the other hand, sometimes we live our lives for the dream, the American dream.
There's another
the dream girl, the dream guy. You know, we're trying to constantly get behind our own screen, or have it come out and pop out at us, right?
Yeah.
So we can live it and experience, you know, the dream self. And what's so disappointing about reality is we can never quite get back to the dream. You know, nostalgia is not always what it seems. Sometimes it's better, it's an interesting thing. And also the, like, how people are saying, like, the American dream's dead, or it was never alive, or
it was just a dream.
And then we get back to the signs and symbols of what something should mean, shouldn't mean, and which gets us back to the logogram, which is, you know, free of constraint and time and all this stuff.
Exactly.
Which the dream space is also that way as well.
Right. See, and that's fascinating, because in that sense, we are, if we engage on that process of collecting and reintegrating those lost pieces of ourselves, right? If we do choose to do that via dreams, whatever, what are we working towards, right? Okay, you integrate all of these lost pieces of yourself via that dream book, and then in order to become whole again, but what does that actually mean? You become the logogram. Right, via arrival. It's like you become that. It's not just now that I am reading the logogram language that transcends time and linear thinking and all that stuff, and duality, all that kind of stuff. I'm not just reading it and it's like this like trippy little thing. It's like, no, you become the logogram. You yourself are a poem. You yourself are a piece of art.
Sure.
You know, in Foucault's way. But it's not just that you've become a piece of art. You've become a hyperdimensional piece of art. Right. So now you yourself, you see that you yourself are not transcendent, because there's nothing to transcend in the first place, because you were already transcended.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that making sense?
Oh, 100%.
Cool. Yeah.
Exactly.
You are the logogram.
Maybe that's how, man, we need to start lucid dreaming. Maybe that's how we can.
I've done some of it, bro. Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Wow, man. But sometimes dreams are terrifying. Like,
I
was trying to remember some dreams I've had recently, and there's one that particularly sticks out. I woke up and I remember like hearing like sirens, like bomb sirens, like it was the 1950s.
Yeah.
And I opened my window and I could see missiles in the sky.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, my perspective like switch to like the mountains in Los Alamos.
Yeah.
And I just saw all the missiles hit the mountain and it just like imploded and exploded freaking high up into the air. And I was like sweaty, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like had to go get Dalton. And the next thing you know, me and Dalton were like rage driving Goldie down the road. Like woke up, but like woke up in a fucking panic, know?
Yeah.
And what makes me kind of think of just the layering of dreams and the idea of them. Think about the oracles, right? Shamans, prophets in the Bible, like Isaiah.
Yeah, Joseph.
Daniel, whatever.
Yeah.
These premonitions would come to them when you're asleep.
Exactly. God would come to them. The angel Gabriel comes to the Virgin Mary, right? I mean,
yes.
Dude, of course we're back on the Bible. We talked about this before the pod. We were like, let's not do a Bib Club. So here we are.
Jesus wanted
He wants it, bro. Jay. Come on.
Fucking.
Okay, so in the Bible, Angel Gabriel comes down to Mary when she's a virgin 16-year-old girl, right? And is like, if you want, and it's you have free will. He said, it's if you want, you can be the mother of God. Okay? You can be the one through whom God speaks in human form. Right, the word made flesh, which is that phrase itself is fucking wild. Right, the word made flesh.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the logogram.
So exactly, Jesus was the logogram. Jesus was the bro.
Right.
Oh man,
and he gave us the power, right? Which was language with himself. Prayer.
Exactly, bro.
Which saves the soul.
Exactly, wow. Saves the soul. So incredible. So. Gabriel comes down. Do you want to be the mother of God? And the 16-year-old girl listens to her dream, right? And says, yes, right? So via dream, like that is where Jesus is then conceived within Mary's womb, right? Is within the dream space,
right?
Within the subconscious, right? I mean, she is literally in a state of active dreaming. She's in an REM state, right? Rapid eye movement. That's when you're dreaming most at night. Right. That is the state that the Virgin Mary is in as she is being, I don't know what the right word is, I guess impregnated, but conceived with the Immaculate Conception, right? Is the product of a dream. So then everything in that story, and the story matters because I mean, it's literally shaped global history for at least 2 millennia now.
Sure.
All of that comes back down to a 16-year-old girl's dream.
Right.
That's pretty wild, right? That's pretty wild.
Yeah. The manifestation of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And it goes into consent too. Consenting to a life choice in one's dream.
Right.
Which then equals out to a conscious reality. Right.
Yeah.
How can we do that other than lucid dreaming, I suppose?
Yeah. And I mean, I've had that. I mean, okay, here's a dream that I had in 2020, I think it was, high pandemic time, where I'm in this dream and it's like a Civil War era, right?
Right.
And all these guys are ready for war. We're inside of this like large cabin or something, but it's clear that we're like preparing to go to battle. Everyone's like getting dressed and stuff, and all these soldiers are ready to go in their Union uniforms. And then I'm having trouble putting my boots on, and I'm like, I'm nervous because we're about to go into war, right? I'm putting these boots on and I'm struggling with it. And then all of a sudden the scene just stops, right? Time stops. Everyone freezes except for me, right? And then I start, let me go back a little bit. I start praying because I'm freaked out in this moment. I'm trying to put these boots on. Everyone's ready for battle. So then I start praying, being from a Catholic background, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, blessed art thou among women, right? And then I start praying and time stops, everything stops, everything freezes. And I stop struggling with the boot and I just like look around, right? Oh shit. And then everyone, all these other soldiers just start to dissolve. And now I'm going lucid and realizing I'm in a dream. And then this young blonde woman walks up to me and she's wearing blue. And she looked like, I've had this happen before in dreams, like where all these dream figments dissolve and then this figure who seems like much more real enters in. Now, I'm not sure if that's like because it's a much more real part of my psyche or because it's like this external to me angelic figure that's, I don't know, whatever. I don't know the source of it. So this woman walks in and I recognize her as Mary.
Sydney.
Right? Yeah. And then everything's calm and and then I'm freaked out and everything still. And she goes, and she's just showing me compassion and ease and all of that. And it's all kind of nonverbal, but I'm asking her just like, why, like, why do I have to do this? Go through struggle, go through suffering, go through difficulty, again, it's in a war setting, right? Which is just symbolic of just strife in life generally. And then she goes, everyone has to, and it's something you need to do on your own, but there is a bigger picture here and you will get through this, Well, and whatever, in the context of whatever difficulty was going in my life at the time, I don't even really remember, but it was just this, I don't know, just this higher subconscious being or whatever it was coming into my dream saying like, I know there is struggle, there is suffering, and I'm sorry, but you can do it and you will do it. And everyone's got to do it
after that.
No, because it wasn't about the boots.
Okay.
Because that was, if anything, me trying to fit into something that didn't work for me.
The boot off.
Yeah, exactly. Because then she and I we leave the building and then we're outside in like this natural setting, and then it feels much more free and good.
And the war's over.
The war's over, yeah. And or at least we got some respite from it. And again, her main message was, everyone has to do it, but you're strong.
And that's what happens when you realize everyone has to do it. The war ends.
Yeah.
And we realize we put too much anxieties on our own lives and our own existence. It's just something that we have to go through.
Yeah.
And you deal with it and you come to peace with it, right?
Yeah.
With the war. Yeah.
And life is fire.
When the war goes away, we create our own war.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Right. Yeah. Oh, we do. We do. Absolutely. Yeah. But life is fire, it's like, because I think I brought up like the near-death experience videos I was watching, but so many of these people come back from the other side and say like,
right.
They've realized that their soul incarnated in this lifetime in order to learn a lesson or something like that. And when you frame life that way, difficulty takes on a much different tone, because now it no longer is just like, why is this happening to me? This is terrible. And becomes, I'm growing my soul. This is ripening me. It's ripening my soul. There's something like that. So it creates, the suffering still there, but it just gives a little more context and meaning.
Right.
So, yeah.
I like that. Kind of making me think of Freud too, because he loved dreams.
Yeah.
It was all about it. But he had a good liner that was like, he finishes a huge examination of everything in a dream, and then the patient asks him, well, what about the cigar? And he says, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. You don't have to look so deep into it. A lot of things are like the boot, right? Sometimes the boot is just a boot.
Sometimes it's just a boot. Yeah.
Right. And really the conversation was, which is interesting because like a lot of classic interpretations, you're falling off of a hill or you can't get up somewhere or something like that. Well, that means in your own life that you feel like you're falling or you're not accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish. And it's not until in your real life you make changes and move on, or you know, find that job you're looking for, go to college, or break up with that person, that you'll actually start having better dreams.
Oh, totally.
It'll equal your dream world.
No, these dreams
better,
are wonderful messages. I mean, I've come to the realization that it's like our bodies, our whole organism is constantly telling us where we're at.
Right.
You know, so for example, if like when I was a high school teacher, I started to get sick, which I just kept getting sick.
Right.
You know, and it was like, until finally I was like, what is my body trying to tell me? Well, one, it's run down, it's tired, my immune system's hurting, and I'm getting burnt out. So of course I'm getting sick. You know, I'm not saying that there's this like, even just like higher intelligence or something that's like making me sick. So I need to realize that I need to work less or something. It was just a natural progression of what was happening. I was overwhelmed, burnt out, burnt out. And then started getting sick. And then I listened to that. So then took a few days off here and there, and then was feeling better. But then started to realize, wow, I'm feeling dread when I'm going to work.
Right.
So what's that? I can either push that away and be like, no, I have to go to work. Like, I can't feel dread. I have to go make money. I have to do this. I have to do that. Or I can say, wait, what's this dread telling me?
Right,
you know, and the dread was telling me, like, get a new fucking job, bro. You know? So you listen to those things.
Sure.
And I think dreams are doing the same thing. You know, if like I'm burnt out and my body's getting sick, which means my body's telling me you've had enough of this. If like you're saying, you're having dreams of you freaking rolling down a hill, being attacked, all this sort of stuff, then it's like at some point you need to say, shit, okay, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I'm not living in alignment with what's authentic and true to me. Maybe this, maybe that, you know? And I had a dream the other night. It was totally fucking random. Maybe it was just the cigar is a cigar kind of dream, but I'm hanging out with the Beatles.
Right.
And John Lennon. I saw a Kurt Cobain interview once, and Kurt Cobain said how his favorite Beatle was John Lennon, because he goes, you could tell that John Lennon was kind of a disturbed person, you know, and coming from Kurt Cobain, I guess he really identified with that. And he goes, he didn't like Paul McCartney's songs because they're like too cute and cringy, but he goes, John was like disturbed, which gave him like a creative edge. Right. So in this dream, I'm hanging out with the Beatles, and I'm just like looking at John Lennon, and I was like, damn, that dude's really disturbed. And he like looked kind of like, you know, like he was like tweaking out a little bit, playing his guitar. And then I woke up and I was like, you know, I don't know. What do you think? Was that like totally random, or was it saying like, oh, I have some disturbance in me that I need to address?
Okay, so this is what's leading me into what I wanted to say too.
Yeah.
Is recognizing your own growth in your dreamscapes.
Interesting.
And recognizing the positivities in your conscious life in the subconscious dreamscape.
Yeah.
So in this situation, you went from Colorado shorts, Jared, John Lennon, you know, Albuquerque teaching, right?
Yeah.
To now fully progressed Jared that can see the shorts and be like, the John Lennon, be like, what's with that guy?
Are you talking about the shorts like in Malkovich?
Malkovich,
oh, okay,
right.
The
like the sad like puppet artist, that's
okay, cool.
You know, the Kurt Cobain suicidal John Lennon, you know. So now you've matured so much from that person and done so much mental work that your dreams are reflecting you seeing your John Lennon self.
Interesting.
What's up with that, dude? You know, and now you like have a cool hot girlfriend. You're cool job. You're like in a cool school program. You have all this shit going on for you. You know what I mean?
Fuck yeah. I'm thriving.
The dreamscape is showing it. You know? Like my dream the other day I was telling you about. Me and you were on the Silk Road.
That was tight.
We're fucking on the Silk Road. We had a great day working. The dream started after the day.
That shit was so cool.
It was nighttime, campfire fire in the desert. We had a beautiful freaking the stars were out, and me and you were counting all our rubies we made that day. We were stoked. So sick.
I love that. That was a good lifetime when you and I were freaking working on the Silk Road. That was so
merchants,
sick. Merchants on the Silk Road. Made so much money.
Well, what's happening in my own current life too is I'm good. I've been like working a lot.
That's right. Yeah.
Getting super stable, like, family life, going on vacations, good friendships, relationships, healthy, like,
Dude, we're thriving.
We're
both thriving.
We're on the
Look at this. This is fucking crazy. We're back on the Silk Road.
Yeah. Episode titled The Silk Road. Dude,
that's funny because like I think I've been in my life generally like so used to feeling like I was struggling or like trying to like make it work or get to the right spot. Whereas like I'm thriving. So are you. And it's like, wow, what's the issue? There's no issue. Things are pretty cool right now.
Right.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And, I don't know. It just sounds like a good situation too, on both sides of the track.
Silk Road.
And it's not like you're also in a relationship. You're like met somebody intellectually too. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
These are all going to be reflections of the good dream, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
My dad has a funny Y-Files conspiracy theory that we're dreaming of somebody else and they are dreaming of us in a different, and it's like 2 different lives or something.
That's cool. Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like the dream world is literally like a different life that I'm leading. Like I remember like meeting certain people, or I always go to like this weird mall, like the 1990s Coronado Mall, and I'm either like in the air ducts, like going into the movie theater, or like having lunch and going up an escalator or something. There's or having a traumatic fight with like, I don't know, somebody or something.
Right. Interesting.
It's weird too that I only like I've only really dreamt of Hillary. Like,
what do you mean in terms of like relationships?
Like relationship dreams sort of thing forever.
Well, she's your Liz Taylor, bro.
Right, like, she's my Liz Taylor.
Freaking Robert Burton.
Yeah. Exactly. Pretty sure I've even had a dream of her being Cleopatra. Lecturing at me. In my toga. But, I don't know. Super interesting. I love the dream talk, because it's a different dimension. Plus, me and you, we completely changed the way we live our lives now, after this conversation. So.
Yeah, everything's different now.
Everything's different. We're trying to get that flow of the Silk Road, right?
The Silk flow, the Silk flow.
Yeah. Successful merchants.
Yeah, flow road.
Chilling with our camel Hagrid.
Yeah, that was a cool lifetime. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I had this dream the other night that was like, you got some time, or you gotta?
I gotta get Dolly in 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. It was really disorienting. Have you ever had like sleep paralysis?
Oh, sure.
I think I was having some like sleep paralysis going on, so oh, it's terrifying. Oh, yeah. So it was like half dreaming, half awake, half sleep paralysis. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And then I'm in this bar, which makes sense because I'm working in this bar, and like I'm totally disoriented though. I like don't know where I am. Don't know what state I'm in. Don't know the people in there. And there's only a few people. And it was like this bar space and then some side room. It was really weird. And I'm like, can't like keep my eyes straight. Everything's kind of blurry, And then I felt like I was like, there was someone that I was like supposed to meet or like something like that. And I was like, yeah, it's just the maybe anxiety around like you're supposed to like meet up with someone and they're not there, or you're not, or in that dream space. I was like forgetting who it was. And I was like, who, where, what am I doing? And then the name Ophelia, Hamlet, right, was coming through. Crazy, and I was like, Ophelia. I feel like, was I supposed to meet up with Ophelia here?
Oh, there's Dolly there. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we just took our dog walk hiatus. But yeah, so Ophelia, so I'm in this space, very disorienting. And it was, and this like, I was like, almost this like, who was it? Something like that. And then the name, I was like grasping at it. I was like, what is this? And then it was Ophelia, which, as we know from the Hamlet pod, Hamlet's girlfriend, Ophelia, who is representative of the dream space.
Right.
The space of well, insanity, really, more than the dream space. Yeah, so I don't know what that dream was getting at. And I remember like walking into this other room and there was like someone sitting there almost like expecting me or something. Like, it's really bizarre.
Ooh, weird,
yeah, it was really strange. I didn't get enough information to like fully understand any of that.
Could I play Freud with that?
Please, go ahead.
Maybe it's this final step you're taking is finding roots in a place, sort of finding Ophelia as the, massaging Mitra's toes out there in the monastery and just like kind of continuing to go into these rooms, and like you need to like actually not find Ophelia in a way, recognize the Ophelia's there and now accomplish this final step of maturation that you've been kind of grasping at a little bit. And I say that because this is something that you've expressed recently, right? As sort of the main contention or like, of course you love that place, it's fine, whatever, yeah. But needing to have your own space,
very much
fortress of solitude, Jaritude. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. One metaphor you made once that was like helpful. Remember you're like the only benefit you get from doing deadlifts is being able to do more deadlifts. Right. That's right. I think that's where I'm at with the monastery at this point, where it's like, it just feels like doing that game in order just to like get better at that game, and it's kind of a ridiculous game sometimes. But
totally.
Anyway, so it could be that next stage of maturation, walking through the land of Ophelia,
right
towards the other side,
seeing the psychosis, finding it actually,
right.
Well, is there something to it there then? Is actually tapping into that dream space, Ophelia being the shaman figure.
Interesting.
Looking at it away from a different perspective as the Mitras, just in general, right? Dreaming of Ophelia, what does that mean? Maybe it means something of yourself is Hamlet-esque, perhaps.
Oh, very, very much.
Because that's who Hamlet was seeking too throughout the play, the love of Ophelia.
Interesting. What do you think of like the dream space as feminine?
And even your shaman was the woman in the blue dress.
Woman in the blue dress, right? Ophelia. And I think there is like this, I don't know what to call it, tradition or something of like the female or the feminine as more so associated with nighttime, moon cycles, dreams, all that kind of stuff. You were talking about like your dream boy, dream girl, dream partner, whatever. And I think manic pixie dream girl, that sort of thing that comes up in film, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think? There's something there that's worth exploring, the feminine as the dream aspect.
Interesting.
In terms of energies, it doesn't even necessarily mean just like women. It could just mean that the feminine energy.
So I'm thinking of the dream world now as something more of a metaphysical place, because it's certainly not conscious per se. It's not something we experience in a material sense, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like memory in a way.
Yeah.
That being said, there's like a maternal, is there like a maternal nurturing nature of it? Sort of the Mother Earth, the philosophical, the like, the life giver and nurturer of the self.
Right.
which can only then be female, right? Because the male doesn't necessarily, the omega doesn't necessarily get into that realm. So it would only be natural for the dream space to be feminine, inherently feminine in that perspective. Is there anything to that?
So I listened to this talk once by this guy, James Hillman, who's a Jungian psychotherapist, writer. And he had this crazy fucking analysis of the Apollo mission to the moon, right? So he goes, and he said it was all descriptive of like male hubris, you know? And he goes, you have the Apollo mission. So you have this little machine called Apollo, which is sun, god of sun, reason, rationality, logic, all that stuff, right? Which, if we're going to kind of talk about masculine and feminine energies,
right,
that stuff is typically associated with the more masculine energy.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So you take this masculine vehicle, essentially, this little semen pod that's shooting out into space, going towards this big glowing orb,
right?
The moon, right? And then again, the moon as feminine, Luna, nighttime, dream space, all of that. So he goes, symbolically, when we sent the Apollo mission, which was all male astronauts, as like the 60s, to the moon, it was symbolically this effort of the conscious to project itself into the dreamscape, you know, and not just integrate the dreamscape, but to colonize the dreamscape.
Oh, okay.
Right? Which, when you do that, kind of pushes that further away. Because I think not the whole point, but a big point of that dream space is to see it and integrate it and understand it, get to know it, explore it.
Right.
You know, not to own it, not to put it in a container, not something like that, but to go, not to plant a flag in it, right? And say, this is mine now.
Well, what's happening is we actually grow from it.
Yeah.
And become it. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily a colonization. It's a dueling sort of thing where we actually don't exist without this sort of the moon and the female scape, right? Yeah. We do, but not to this point. Right. Maturation and consciousness and all this actually comes post-birth, right? You need the female to grow within inside in order to then become man. Or to become a person. Yeah. Man or female or whatever the case, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, if we take that sort of birthing, prenatal, whatever the case metaphor with the dreamscape, what's actually happening is we're going back to a maternal space or a sort of growing state within the womb, back to a womb space of the consciousness, where there we can grow, mature, and become into a person. So it's almost like the womb for the consciousness. If the consciousness was a thing,
that's wild.
The subconscious dream space is our womb where we grow, and the one place that nurtures us and is always there, always already, is the mother.
Yeah,
and we're getting that power and wisdom and etc. through that body, right? And it's not actually until the interaction with the fathers later that you then can learn conscious growth,
right?
But it's the womb of our brains that the dream space is.
Yeah, that's incredible. So dreams as a gestation pod.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, dream as the womb. Right. Yeah, like quite literally going in and birthing different parts of yourself, you know. So if we look at the Virgin Mary myth, you know, it's like,
going all the way back around
into the dream space, immaculate conception, conceiving something from that dream space and then birthing it into reality, into the conscious space. You know what I mean? And this is what artists do, or shamanic healers, any of that. goes into the dream space and then births whatever findings into reality, right.
And it's not actually until later does Jesus then interact with the Father, God, and he becomes baptized as an older man, like in his 20s, right? Or something, 30, exactly, whatever. Yeah. Not until way later on in life does the conscious Jesus self get wisdom and mature through the Father.
Yeah. See, that's fascinating. And if we're kind of doing this reading of this stuff in terms of feminine, masculine, man, woman, all that kind of stuff, like one critique I've heard of like male culture in today's society is that there is no clear rite of passage.
Right.
Like in ancient cultures and stuff like that, there would be some kind of clear delineation between being a boy and being a man. You would go through some kind of rite of passage, vision quest, initiation, whatever it is, in which you and the society says you are now the bar mitzvah. Yeah, you are a man now.
Right.
Welcome. And with that comes a level of responsibility,
right?
A level of expectation, all of that. So that's been jettisoned by our culture. And if that's true, and that could be argued for sure, but let's go with the reading. If that's true, then we are living in a nation of boys, which I largely think is the case.
Yes.
So I guess to using the Jesus thing, it's like to be gestated within a dream, conceived within a dream, and then birthed through the mother. And this is true of just like psychological development. Children mostly identify, and this is very general, but mostly identify with the mother up until a certain age. And then there's more identification with the father, And again, that's super general, might not be true. But at any rate, like you're saying, there's just different roles there. You're in that more maternal space for a while, and then you're in the more paternal space for a while, right? And then ideally you just become your own adult, your own integrated being. You're no longer relying on mommy and then daddy. You're now an adult who is responsible,
Right.
In the sense that you're able to respond to life and situations.
But then how would we care for ourselves post-parental? Well, we would use the same tools as the womb, as the mother, as the father.
Exactly, yeah.
And this goes into, your conscious dreaming now. You're still trying to grow yourself, care for yourself, because that's really what growth is survival too.
Yeah.
And understanding and awareness of the world, not touching the stove, this and that.
Yeah.
So once we leave the parental circle, we have to create this circle on our own, which to me is the dreamscape. Warnings and also accomplishments, as we were saying, the Silk Road, also the thriving dreams, because what happens in the womb when you nourishment, what happens when you're a child, parents reward you, this and that, right? Well, same thing in the adult staged dream world is we get disciplined and rewarded according to our conscious decisions in that sort of maternal space that we create for ourselves, where we can third person look at our actions or our relationships or whatever and say, I want this, I don't want this. This is my fear manifested. This is love manifested. This is, friendships manifested. And then if we can make a strong connection with those dreams, with the conscious self, perhaps you can find that flow state we were talking about in the beginning.
Right.
The Silk Road that connected cultures, connected the self,
Ooh, interesting. So that we can get into that dream
integration.
Too. Yeah, because the Silk Road and you and I counting our rubies after a good sale.
Right.
Which is profitable day. We were there, bro. We were there. That happened, But that's like, what was the Silk Road, and it was this path of like great cultural exchange and trade and all of this between regions and nations and all of that. So like, the Silk Road in your own Silk Road of your own mind, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Finding a place where also the conscious self is integrated, you know, in a positive, healthy way, you know, seeing things culturally, you know, having good experiences with students, teaching, friendships, family, you know, making money, commerce. We're saying, listen, there's nothing like, couldn't be more traumatizing or unhealthy for you or stressful than being broke, having the poor man's stomach. You know? It's nice to be able to be like, take your kiddo on a vacation, whatever, nice place to stay, rest your head, the Osprey nest, nest. Listen, man, there's nothing like, what's the word I'm looking for? Envious. You should be with an osprey that doesn't have a nest, you know, starving most of the time. That poor osprey, you know, it's the Silk Road. It's cool to like be happy we got a bunch of gems so we could like live a fun human life despite, you know, the bureaucracy of the Silk Road.
Right.
Finding a home in it.
Yeah.
Beneath the stars. Still part of nature too, you know, out there in the sand dunes.
God, that's interesting. Yeah. And that's beautiful. Yeah. And finding out what's real for us too, you know, within that dynamic that you're describing, I think, because it's like going back to the becoming your own adult, exceeding the mommy, exceeding the daddy, going further, further. Yes. Like Ken Kesey's bus across the country, go further.
Right.
And like, which side note, that shit was wild. You know about that? Like Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters.
Kesey, wild.
Yeah. Like so apparently I just heard this the other day listening to something. Part of that, because they were driving from the West Coast to the East, and they were very consciously, they like wrote about this. They were like, we are undoing like manifest destiny. We are going in the opposite direction that the country grew in, because we're going to start a new revolution, a revolution of the psyche.
Right.
And then they get in this bus further, drive east, and just start handing fucking tabs of acid out to people along the way.
Right.
What the hell? What fucking weirdos? Who does shit like that?
Wild. Yeah.
But anyway, like going further, going beyond.
I really like that idea, by the way, going back east.
Undoing the, the initial direction. Yeah.
Also, what culture, the fact that now the Western culture is so representative of contemporary culture because it's recently made.
Yeah.
What now is the culture of old New England, you know, old Boston, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's more the West now,
Well, that's interesting. All right, let's talk about that. What's the frontier now? Because, right? I mean, actually, here's a good question that relates, because it's like, okay, manifest destiny, you know, from the settler's perspective, move west, go west, young man, you know?
Right.
Go create your life, go find your plot of land, go become who you need to become, go west, you know? And then you have California, which like in the end of the 20th century, California is like this. They hosted the Olympics in like the 80s, and like it was this like and it's like in fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers, they talk about whatever the song is, Californication, like it's the edge of Western civilization, which it was. It's like you've gone as far west as you possibly could. That is where the project of westward expansion and development of the quote unquote Western world ended. You know, it was like, boom, freaking Los Angeles, California, The Doors, Grateful Dead. There's all the crazy, like, just explosion of culture. California has such a sense of ethos in within the context of like the Western world, right?
Right.
And that was like sort of the 20th century, you know, the end of the 20th century. Now you see California burning the fuck up. You know, during the pandemic, it was just like people fleeing California because of the extreme amount of homelessness, fucked up government, all this stuff, right? Just housing prices all of this stuff, climate change, like California imploding, right? Which is very symbolic of like, okay, the edge of Western civilization has met its conclusion essentially, right? So now we're stepping into something else. There's another new frontier. And I think in like the 90s, 2000s, .com boom, all that stuff, it was like, okay, the next frontier is going to be a virtual one.
Oh,
right.
Right.
We've done it. We've plotted all the land. There's nowhere else physically to go.
Right.
Except for maybe the moon, but that seems to be taking a bit longer. So we're going to go into virtual space. That's the new frontier. Right.
Right.
And now that has been colonized and corrupted and fucked up. You know, it's like corporations took over the internet, you know, all that.
Artificial intelligence.
Whereas initially, early 90s, the internet was perceived to be this like free expanse where all these like artists and thinkers could come in and just freely share ideas. It was very utopian. And then very quickly it became monetized and corporations take it over. And here we are with social media destroying people's minds and all this shit, right? So virtual space, that one's kind of at its edge, you know, in terms of the new frontier, taking the bus further, Ken Kesey, right? So what's the next one? What's beyond virtual space? I just tried VR for the very first time about 20 minutes ago when Dalton was showing me. That shit tripped me out. I still feel dizzy from it. So maybe VR space, but I feel like that's also just gonna, you know, it's not that different from the internet. It's just kind of a more encompassing kind of space, but still sort of the same general thing. I don't know. Is dream space the final frontier? You know, is dream space the frontier that, because that's the one space that like the corporate mentality, capitalism, power structures, all that shit can't touch, you know?
Right.
And even if they can, you can always go deeper beyond it, you know, because you go deep into that dream space, deep into the space of creative gestation, of immaculate conception. And from that emptiness, I mean, you go in there and then it's what can touch you? What's, you know, it's like, can that be colonized? Can that be concretized? What do you think?
Isn't there a movie where they go into the dream space and people are like advertising in their dreams?
Yeah, that sounds like a Black Mirror episode or something.
Yeah, something like that. God, that'd be terrible. I'd be so pissed if some corporation was advertising in my dreams.
Yeah, that'd be awful. I mean, they essentially are.
Two things to say to that. I think one, the next frontier mentally, I would believe and culturally is artificial intelligence. As a like educator right now, I've seen the immense change in not only the literature space and like scholarly space, but the students, how they write and everything. Like 80% of students use AI in some sort of capacity. It's changing everything. It's fucking wild. It's gonna like legit change humanity in the next 10 to 15 years. It's already begun. It already is. Yeah. But it's gonna be noticeably different. Yeah. You know, and in 20 years, we're not even gonna this is going to be a long.
The robotics are getting good too. They're going to have AIs like walking around like androids.
They just had a like robot race the other day, you know, with people racing against the in a marathon, like a series of robots. Fucking so crazy. Weird, and they were like breaking ankles, the robots.
Oh, poor guys.
You know, so poor guys. My ankle. That being said, I like how this is leading us to a pendulum. I like how you were saying the next frontier, which is taking longer than expected, is outer space, essentially.
Right.
And with that new telescope, we've just found like KB12-8 or whatever. Yeah. And that's a planet that's like 5 times the size of Earth, but it's in the habitual zone. We've already scanned. It has water. It has all the atmospheric gases that you need for oxygen. Yeah. It's in the, you know, they have a nice little star there. It's fucking, it's real. It's a gigantic
Well, there's so many planets. Yeah, there's billions of planets.
There's billions, trillions.
Yeah.
So with the help of AI, we're now then gonna see a new frontier be like in about 100 years. Which is gonna be fucking back to Prometheus, episode 3, J to J.
Right, check it out.
We're gonna be in the Wayland Company, like going to K12B, because with our AI, we're going to figure out how to like put ourselves in cryogenic state, whatever the case.
Right.
Figure out light speed, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And see, here's I was thinking about this the other day with the dire wolves.
Right.
They brought the dire wolf back to life. This species has not been alive for 10,000 years.
Right.
And all of a sudden they brought it back. What the fuck kind of line was just broken? Because that's fucking crazy. And the woolly mammoth is next, and the dodo. So,
and their biologists are making like raptor skin to make as purses for like $100,000, and it's like real skin from like, you know, recreated biological cells of raptor skin.
That makes me want to throw up, dude. That's so scary.
How wild is that?
Yeah. And look, man, it's like, okay, all the great religious traditions, spiritual traditions say, come present, step into the present. That is where your salvation is. That's where anxiety cannot exist in the present, because anxiety is always related to the past or future. Fear is generally related to the past or future. Unless you're actually, you know, in a dangerous situation at the moment. But yeah. But generally, come into the present and we're okay. What is there? You know, it's okay. It's safe in the present. So that's what all these traditions say, you know? And then we're living in a moment where we're bringing fucking dire wolves back to life. We're selling raptor purses, working on bringing the woolly mammoth back. We're fucking with the time-space continuum, right?
Right.
And then we're also finding freaking planet KB12, whatever. We're launching off into space. We're going into virtual reality space, AI, all this shit. So we're seeing this weird fucking juncture where the deep past is spilling and leaking into the present. That makes me want to throw up, dude. That's so scary.
Right.
Also leaking into our present.
Right.
And it gives me this feeling, and it's still too early to tell what any of it's going to mean, but it gives me this feeling of like, I feel like it seems like there's a boundary being crossed, like some kind of sacred boundary.
Yes.
I feel violated.
Okay.
By the past and the future leaking out into this present moment. And then it's like, even in the politics, right? You have these like far future thinking politicians that are like, let's go, like, fucking Green New Deal, clean this shit up. Like, we need to step into the next iteration of humanity, or else we're going to destroy ourselves. And then you have this other segment that's saying, no, we need to go back to how it was, you know? So again, neither of them are present, you know, both of them. You have the people who are fetishizing the past and the people who are fetishizing the future, but no presence. I don't know. What do you make of any of that?
So go with me on this one.
Yeah, please.
Change is never easy, and it feels sometimes like a violation.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe humanity at this point right now, the change we're discussing that's happening now and is going to be, you know, very objective in 15, 20 years. Maybe this is the change. We're turning into the cephalopods. We're turning into logograms where we're not past, present, or future. We're experiencing time all at once. Right. And that's not how our being has ever been. That's not how our conscious has been. But now with AI and with the bringing back, having the ability to literally remanifest the past, we're starting to come into this new perspective or sense of reality, just like we were talking about on the last pod, how your reality can change, with verbalization or just by seeing something. Mm-hmm. While now we're experiencing past, present, and future
all at once.
So it feels like a violation of the South because we're morphing into different types of beings, different types of mammals, which will then transcend into the stars, all this stuff, right? Yeah. But what is that doing to our dreamscape? It's crazy. Like, I feel like I'm experiencing now past, present, and future.
Yeah.
In one point, I'm seeing Los Alamos get nuked.
Yeah.
Another point, I'm freaking on the Silk Road with you, joyous freaking, counting rubies around the fire, smoking hashisha,
Right.
And then at other times, dreaming of the present at that mall, Coronado Mall, whatever, turning into a logogram. What do you think?
Right. So I mentioned on last pod the Burroughs line, from our eyes, the future leaks, right? So I was thinking a bit more about that. And from our eyes, one, that literally means perspective. How you're seeing then creates the future. And also the I, the pronoun I, from our eyes, from who we think we are, the future leaks. I don't know. Yeah, it's really strange. I mean, what you're saying about, like, it feels like time is collapsing.
Right.
And you're right. I mean,
right.
And there is this discomfort when there's change. I mean, when the
time stone,
when the moth, when the butterfly is getting ready to leave the cocoon.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. It's scary.
Metamorphosis. Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary. There's this Zen story where this old Zen master is sitting there and watching this moth climbing out of its cocoon, right? And then the moth is struggling to get the cocoon off, and this old teacher, he just uses his finger to kind of bat the cocoon off the moth and kind of help it out. And then the moth was unable to fly, and he realizes, because crawling out of the cocoon was the process of strengthening its wings.
Right.
And by helping him take the cocoon off, the moth lost the opportunity to strengthen its wings enough that it could then fly. So there has to be this process of strengthening as we work our way out of this confining cocoon. It's like we work our way out, and there is a process of discomfort, maybe even a sense of violation or something as our shell starts to break. But then it's a process of strengthening, it's a process of working out what that next iteration of who we are is really going to be, how we're really going to fly.
Right.
So maybe that's it. I mean, maybe we are actually just dissolving the boundaries between past, future, present, here and there. I mean, even like spatially, it's like we have dissolved space in a big way. I mean, you look at the modernist era, and that was all about like crunching down space, because you see the development of like the railroad, which at the time was like, holy shit, I could go from New York to Boston and it's not going to take me fucking 8 months, like it's pretty wild. Or the car after that,
which changed who we were,
which completely changed who we were.
So I was watching old videos on the golfer Gary Player, and he had a good quote that was, the greatest gift that can be given you is adversity at times. And he said that's because sort of this cocoon thing, every time you get through adversity, you grow as a person, you get better, you learn lessons, you apply things to whatever, So we get to that state where the cocoon, breaking it, is literally stripping something away so we can spread our wings.
Right, exactly.
And we'll never get there if we're, constantly getting coddled. And, that's the classic story of raising a kid. Too much coddled, giving them too much, no adversity, protecting them from anything. Well, then once they face life, they can't fly and exist out there in the woods. Like, Hagrid, guy's been coddled his whole life. If he went out into the wilderness, we were just talking about this at the park, he'd be goners, be eating grass for a week. That's it. But I wanted to say another thing about the eyes thing, right?
Yeah.
Out of the so back in Burroughs' time, was it Burroughs?
Yeah.
Okay, people's eyes showed the future, bled out the future, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. In our time, our eyes bleed out past, present, and future.
Yeah.
And maybe what's happening with this incel revolution, Discord, where at the peak of people not having sex in the history of mankind, where Discord, we can't see each other in the eyes anymore. Whereas before, love used to mean the future. But now when we see the person that we love, we get anxiety because we're not just seeing the future with them, a potential, a hope. We're seeing their past traumas, we're seeing their present, and we're seeing the future all at once. And it's fucking scary.
Interesting. So it is. Yeah. Yeah, it just made me think of this line. I don't know if it like relates, but at the Albuquerque Zen Center, the teacher there at the time, he said like part of the process of meditation, he goes, is well, taking off that shell. And you start to just like feel more, it's like colors get a little bit brighter, or you just get a little more attuned and sensitive to your environment. And you're kind of taking off your shell and protective mechanism and kind of opening up a bit more to the world. And because we all have our defense mechanisms, but that ends up limiting us for, connections that we can really have and all that kind of stuff. And he said, like, we live life as if we're trying to caress our lovers while wearing winter gloves.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that one hit. And I was like, wow, it's such a potent image. Imagine lying there, just naked with your lover, and you just want to just be so close and just all of that. And then you're wearing winter gloves and you go to like stroke their face and run your hand through their hair. And it's just like, oh, fuck. It's so like removed and distant. Talk about like mediation. And, yeah. So he goes, the process of meditation is taking off those gloves and experiencing a renewed sense of intimacy with all of life.
Right.
So I wonder, like, what is this?
What are these gloves we're putting on?
What are these gloves and what will it mean to take them off? Is it going to be that we're now spacefaring creatures going to the next world, and that the earth itself has become a limitation that we need to shed? Will it be a spiritual dream-like thing? We delve further and further into dreams, and in that space find more strength and clarity and becoming? Will it be going deeper into the past, finding out who we actually were in such a way that clarifies and strengthens who we are, letting us fly more clearly, Right. I don't know.
I think, honestly, evolution and, the metamorphosis and the growth and the maturation, though uncomfortable at the time, is ultimately a good thing for the race or for the self conscious.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the moth in a cocoon, imprisoned, now can fly.
Yeah.
Now can own itself, protect itself, has left that sort of birthing place, to be in a sense of living, self and being in identification. And that's really what we're trying to get ultimately. We're not necessarily even trying to live in the dream space, right? I think the ultimate goal is to have the most fulfilling living conscious that we can while we have it.
Yeah.
And finding a place, even if we are all turning into timeless holograms.
Yeah.
Eventually maturing, and what kind of love is that when you see someone from the past, present, and future instead of just a future, right?
Yeah.
Accepting a person for their entire self on a non-linear timeline.
Mm-hmm.
That's true love. And maybe that's not something we've ever really experienced, getting to another place of consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. Would that affect the senses? Would it be taking off the gloves?
Oh, wow.
And actually caressing our lover for the first time, becoming, physically like getting that connection, with them.
Yeah.
Because there's something to our, I think we're talking about this Star Trek scene where Data's like, why are you touching the like spacecraft, and Picard's like, for humans, this is a way that we connect with, objective reality, is by actually, reaching out and touching something, and then we get that cosmic connection with it, it becomes real to us.
Yeah. Taste and see. Right. It's like taste and see, touch and know, it's this like, it's that intimacy of the senses, of being so bound up with something, and like, and that makes me think like caressing the lover, was that really mean? It's like in a spiritual religious context, it means unity with God, and God is everything, all of it, the entire universe, the entire earth. And there is no separation between you or anything else. And that's intimacy, Right. It can also mean quite literally, with a lover, really, it's like you've let go of enough of your own defense mechanisms and fears and insecurities that you're able to open and let go fully into romantic love. It could mean all these different things.
And that's the memorial of Jesus Christ, right? Eat this bread. This means my flesh.
Exactly.
My body.
It's so embodied. Eat this, drink this.
This is my blood.
Yeah.
We ingest it.
Right.
Become it almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
On behalf of the Jareds, thank you for listening. Follow, comment, and tell your friends. The Jareds will be back next time, and always remember, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. Have a good night's rest.
I don't know if that's a natural end, but...
I don't know. I don't know what else to say after that.
Seriously.
Like,
seriously.
Yeah.